Well, there we go. Let's get our Facebook friends in here, and then it'll be time to start the show. There we go. 1 and 2. All right, welcome in. It is the 7th of May, and it's time for an episode of Building the Broncos. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by these Tuesday evening shows, Carl Dumler. Carl, how you doing? What's good? Happy May to you. We're getting further and further from the draft. What's next? Rookie numbers, schedule release. It's the most exciting time of the year.
Yeah. It's always a great time. No end to content at this point, but no, it is. It's still fun. I still have people, even today I had people messaging asking, "Hey, we're a week out from the draft now. How are you feeling about it?" Those kind of things, or a little more than a week, I guess, at this point. And yeah, I mean, I'm still very excited about the draft and what these players can do, and feel like we've actually got some young players coming in that can be early contributors and start building up with this roster that needs to be rebuilt, all those kind of things. But yeah, so no, it's going to be fun to talk about this topic tonight, because it's still funny to hear all the rumors still trying to come out even a week and a half after the draft. Like, still more and more information's coming out, and you're just like, what can you believe when it comes to all this stuff?
And, coming from the Broncos sources, really they had their board and everything, but only a select few in that front office even knew what the actual ranking was in the end. So really, Denver can control the narrative to a very large extent. Will we ever know the full truth of it all? I mean, I don't know. I think you can take them at their word or be like, we'll see how it plays out. But what fun is that? Speaking of fun, we got our people coming in here. Dylan Von Arx, of course, saying sup Broncos country. Make sure you hit that like button on the way in, share on all platforms, and subscribe if you haven't already. We got our guy David coming in saying evening, everyone. So no names to those reports, and it's just rumors because people have nothing else to talk about. I mean, Eric Mangini was on there talking about it. Jeremy Fowler was talking about it. But if you're talking about actual, like, it wasn't a direct quote in an interview with the Broncos or Bears front office, but that's how most of these come out if it's not a direct press conference. So
right.
Again, you want to take much weight in it. You don't want to take any weight at all. I don't know. It's that time of year.
Yeah. I mean, they're not going to say, "Hey, George Payton told me directly this was how their board was set up." I know Colin Cowherd talked today or yesterday. The Broncos board, when it came to the quarterback order, they just had the names all scrambled in a big circle around them. No numbers, just a circle, because they didn't want anybody to know. He said the only 3 people that knew who the Broncos liked was George Payton, Greg Penner, or the ownership group. I guess I'll just say they're all one person combined together.
Entity.
And Sean Payton. Yeah, they're one entity. Because they didn't want a big circle going out there with the possibility of things getting out and who they liked. And so that's why, of course, reports coming out before the draft, pretty much every quarterback, except for Caleb Williams, just because everybody knew he was going to go number 1, were linked to the Broncos at some point in that month beforehand of, I've heard Broncos really love Jaden Daniels today. And they might have. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know their quarterback order completely at this point. I know Benjamin Albright has said he's heard the order was Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and then Bo Nix. He could be right. I don't know.
Yeah, and the thing about, I'm not discrediting Albright at all. He definitely has sources connected with the Broncos, but a lot of the media is and can be used as useful tools to control the narrative. I mean, you and I have been used before to that extent, right? Told one thing and then from pretty good, connection, and then boom, something else. Well, screw you. I mean, I get it. It's a game at the end of the day, but controlling the narrative is a big part. And if you want to take them completely at their word, ride or die, God bless you. We will see how it plays out, and maybe later on the full truth, maybe it is the truth, will come out. Who knows? But yeah, really interesting tidbit there from Cowherd recently about the Broncos, just how secretive they were in this whole process. I got to say, I have some doubts that Davis Webb didn't have some idea of who it would have been, considering how much he organized the throwing sessions and the post pro day workouts and everything. But
yeah,
I don't know. We'll get into it here and try to connect some of these dots, but it's still very much left to interpretation. We got, of course, good to see you, David. I wanted to say hello to William. Also, a shout out to his comment here. Joe Collier passed away. Rest in peace to him. Longtime Bronco. So sad to hear that. I know that he was definitely before my time, but still a legend, and definitely represents part of the history of the team. So rest in peace to him. We got Mike S coming in saying, "What's up, Carl, Nick, Scott, Dylan, and Broncos country? Hope you're doing well. Always appreciate Mike coming in." We also got, of course, Woofy saying hello and good evening, Broncos country. Good to see you. Our guy, Michael Ronquillo with the stars. God bless you, Michael, with the super chat. Thank you so much for supporting the show. He says, "Good evening, Nick and Carl. I'm building the Broncos. Go Broncos. Go, Michael. Hope you're doing well. Really do appreciate you coming in." And our guy, Papa Bear, coming in, getting the stars on the YouTube side of things, the super chats rolling, saying, "Good evening, Broncos country. Knicks for 6 and Bo knows." I like the Knicks for 6. We'll roll that one for now. I mean, you can't say Knicks 6 because it sounds too much like pick 6, but Knicks for 6 is good. So we'll roll with that one. Luckily, I think we won't see many Nick 6s during his time in Denver with how he protected the football at Oregon, but you never know. So hopefully that doesn't become a thing. Knock on wood, somebody out there for us. We got our guy Gary Palmer coming in, say hello, fellow Broncos maniacs with the pink hand waving. Good to see. I couldn't tell if it was like a turkey or an organ or something. Thank you so much, David. We got this one already. Appreciate you. Always love hearing from Papa Bear, of course. Daniel Berry Sports. Hey, everyone. How you doing? James Edward. Hey, boys. Sean Ward's in the house. Our guy, Chase Wilner, of course. Roy Osborne's in the house. We got Outside the Echo Chamber. Well, I don't know if this is Zach Wilson's burner or something, but God bless you, man. If Zach Wilson ends up winning the starting job, Outside the Echo Chamber needs to, go do a victory lap or something because he is riding for him. Appreciate the comments coming in. Michaela Israel talking about ride or die, always supporting MHH. Good evening, Broncos country. Good evening to Michaela. Met Michaela at the meet and greet this year. We should have that information coming out in about probably not the meet and greet, but the schedule, I think probably in 8-9 days. That'll be fun. And we got Benjamin Flores saying it's my favorite pod from MHH. Well, thanks, Ben. Says, along with the Broncos for breakfast with Nick and Scott, keep up the good work. Well, keep up the good commenting like that. Ben, we appreciate you. And Lawrence Rivera, of course, as well, always supporting us with the super chats. So great. So let's get into it first. I think probably the most pertinent information is Jeremy Fowler coming out today. He released his ESPN Insider with like 32 tidbits from the teams. And Jeremy Fowler does good work. Obviously, he's not, the Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter level of news breaking, but been at ESPN for a bit and has some good connections. And he revealed today that the Broncos had called up for pick number 9 overall. So Denver was on the phone with the Chicago Bears, at least seeing what it would cost to move up. Now, who it was for, they don't know. Were they actually really intent on moving up? Was it just checking the price? Unsure. One source for Fowler did say that Bo Nix was their guy. But I do think it's interesting because Denver was calling to move up to 9 and reportedly, but then when you hear Payton and everybody talk, Denver had options for moving back at 12, moving back a little bit, but they were concerned enough about the quarterback run that they didn't want to move back and they just wanted to take Bo. So that personally doesn't add up to me about wanting to move up for a guy and then being there at 12. Like, well, actually, maybe we can move back. Now we'll just take our guy. What do you think? Am I overthinking this a little bit?
Well, I'm sure. I mean, you always make the preliminary phone calls just to see, hey, what's it going to take? What do you really want? What's the bottom line? Just to make sure. And it is one of those things. You don't want to mess around when it comes to your quarterback.
If he's your guy.
If he is your guy, you don't want to mess around with that. So I don't doubt that the Broncos were making some phone calls. I think they felt pretty good about their chances of Bo Nix getting to 12, though, which is why you didn't see the trade up. Mm-hmm. I think they realized we probably can't trade back and get him. When you start hearing teams like the LA Rams really liked him, there's about 2 or 3 other teams that they talked about that could have possibly taken Bo Nix there in the first round. Now, maybe that's the Broncos releasing information, trying to get people say, hey, we weren't the only one that really liked this guy. I don't know. But still, they ended up making that choice to stay there at 12. And I get it for sure on that end.
And I did want to get the specifics of this because it wasn't just calling around before. It was on the night of the draft. Denver was called while the Bears were on the clock at 9. And if Roma Dunze wasn't there, it would have been possible. But it wasn't clear who Denver was targeting in any potential trade up or if they even had a specific target. But again, I don't think it really correlates with Denver sitting there at 12 and having deals on the deals potentially to move back and still take the guy if they were hoping to move up. So I don't know. Again, maybe they're just seeing what it would cost. Maybe it's, Sean Payton killing time. Who knows? I'd be curious to hear what from the Broncos side of things, because this was obviously from a Bears source specifically. And again, Jeremy Fowler did say that one of his sources was emphatic that Bo was their guy. So I'm not sure exactly how that lines up, but shout out to Jeremy Fowler for that. And if that's the case, again, more credit to the Broncos for holding fast. I don't know if we won't know ever, probably, if they actually suckered the Vikings to move up and think that JJ McCarthy was their guy when it was really Bo Nix. The reports are that Denver was concerned that the Vikings were going to take Bo Nix, and when they didn't, they were excited and took him. But again, everything with orange-colored glasses from that lens, at least.
Yeah, for sure. And thankfully the Broncos got to stay there at 12, get their guy, get their prize. And talking about a prize, I want to talk about AG1. I just turned 38, and the older I get, the more seriously I know I have to take care of my health and nutrition. That's where we enter into AG1. No matter what you do for a living, it can become all too convenient to rely on coffee and caffeine for that extra energy and focus. But that's not great for your body, especially blood pressure. And there's always the dreaded crash. With AG1, I get sustained energy, so I'm not reaching for another cup of coffee in the afternoon. On top of that, I can't stand swallowing those massive multivitamins. And we all know how crucially important it is to take care of your gut health when it comes to probiotics. AG1 checks all three of those boxes, and it does so in an impressive, life-altering way. Focus, energy, nutrition, and improved gut health all in one delicious smoothie. AG1 is next level stuff.
AG1 is a supplement I trust to support my whole body health and help me feel my very best. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs when you first subscribe. Go to drinkag1.com/huddle. Again, that's drinkag1.com/huddle. Check it out. So yeah, in the end, we won't know for sure what the reality of the situation is with how Denver's board was ranked or whatever, but they reportedly tried to call up. In the end, I think Sean Payton he's smart, but I also think he's not really a poker face kind of guy. You kind of know where he's at. I mean, you could kind of tell immediately with like Russell Wilson, right? Not his guy. When he's happy or not, you can kind of tell. And to me, came on Pat McAfee almost immediately after the Broncos selected Bo Nix. If they did have JJ McCarthy selected slightly higher, I don't think they personally view Bo Nix as a consolation prize. I think they're still very excited of getting him in there. However they ranked the board, we'll see. I think we probably do have to take them at their word. I heard from somebody outside that it wasn't Jaden Daniels at 2, it was Drake May. Never really a possibility of those top 3 guys, considering what the Vikings offered to get up to 3, and they didn't even get it done. But yeah, Denver walking away Bo Nix. I think it's really hard for me to say, hearing Sean Payton talk about it, that they're still not excited, even if he was slightly behind JJ McCarthy. Not that he is.
Well, so he talked about it before the draft. We have to love a quarterback to take them. And like I said, going on all these different shows that he did, the press conferences afterwards, like the things he would talk about, he was so much more in depth when he talked about the game of Bo Nix than he ever was Russell Wilson. Wilson, he'd talk about a little bit of the magic stuff happening here and there, but I almost felt like he talked higher of Jarrett Stidham throughout the preseason training camp last year, even during the season once he got to the starting role. So yeah, I do. I think he loves him. I think that he feels like it's a pretty good pairing. Maybe I agree. I don't think he viewed him as the best quarterback in the draft, but for where they were and what they could get and how they can really design this offense now, I think he is very, very excited about that possibility. And so I don't view him as a consolation prize, kind of like what we were talking about with Eric Mangini. Like he talked about it of the Broncos are not just hungry, they were starving for a quarterback. So they had to take one. And essentially Bo Nix was the last choice. I don't think it was that. I really do think that he was one of their higher ranked quarterbacks, one that they think they can get a whole lot out of in this system. And they don't view him as just a guy to get him to that next place, because really the career of Sean Payton, it's not completely on the line because he's won a Super Bowl. He's had a lot of success, but if he really wants to take that next step to the next tier of head coaches in NFL history, Bo Nix will make or break that. And he's already, 60 years old? He doesn't have a whole lot of time to go to that next quarterback and build them up. And so it's Bo Nix or bust for the legacy of where he's going to end up. Is he a top 20 coach in NFL history, or is he a top 10 coach? Bo Nix is that deciding factor.
I will say how the quarterback cycle works out for a lot of teams. If Bo Nix flames out and isn't the guy, you're probably back on the market in 2026. And it is looks like a much better quarterback crop in 2026. Now we're getting way ahead of ourselves there to talk about that, but it makes sense. Big picture, 3-year timeline. If that happens, you'd still have a cheap, cost controlled overall quarterback if Bo ended up being a really high quality backup, not what you want for the 12th pick. And we're not there yet, but you would have I think with how much power he has, you'd have probably still another chance in that timeline 2 years from now, unless it's organizational failure, top to bottom, laughing stock kind of stuff, which I don't think will happen with Sean Payton. But man, I'm so jaded after the whole Russell Wilson thing that how can we talk in definitives anymore? Oh, we're getting a good quarterback here. Look how good he's been. Absolutely horrible. So
yeah,
we'll see. We'll see. I'm really jaded on that one. But let's say hello to some more people coming in. George Fox, with the guys we have at quarterback, how do you see them getting down to the top 3? Denver Broncos for life. I think that, heck, it could even be the top 2. I know they have that rule where they can call up somebody, so it makes sense to have a quarterback be on your practice squad that you can call up, right? Because they don't count as the call-up rule. Right. Or is it if they're on your active roster, they don't count to the 53? It's that one, I think.
So, yeah, you can call them up from the practice squad. Now it's unlimited times.
Yeah.
So last year they had to add DiNucci to the active roster and keep him there because they'd called him up so many times they couldn't do it again. They changed that rule. And then the 53, you could have him not activated, but if you need an emergency quarterback to come in, they could come in. So he wouldn't count towards the 46 active.
That's it.
But that third one can actually still play if there's 2 injuries. And obviously those other 2 quarterbacks can't come back in at any point after that. I think that's how the rules go. If I remember right.
But I'm not rule expert. I don't know. Maybe I'll sit down when I go on parental leave with the NFL rule book and everything they've changed. Who knows? But how do I see it shaking out? I could see a reality where they do keep all of Stidham, Zach Wilson, and Bo Nix. Of course, Bo Nix is safe. It is a battle for quarterback number 2 between Stidham and Wilson. Obviously, Wilson has the big arm, still relatively young, perceived upside, if you will. But Stidham's been here. He knows the system. They were really impressed with him. He's got to work with Davis Webb for a whole year as well. I think he's got to have the upper leg. I don't think it should come down to financials between them, unless one is so obviously better than the other that it's it doesn't make sense to keep the second guy or the third guy there. But how it shakes out, I'm not sure, but I'm really excited to see what the quarterback 2 battle is, assuming Bo Nix takes it and runs with it, which in my opinion should happen, considering all the factors we talked about last week with Bo Nix.
Yeah. We got Cody W coming in with a $5 super saying, seen a lot of stuff about Bo at Auburn being bad. I went back and seen him beat Herbert as a freshman at 18 years old on a last-minute drive to win the game. Yeah, I would say if you go back and watch his time at Auburn, it was very up and down. You've got some incredible highlight plays that just make you go, this kid's got something. It's special. That last-minute drive, and that was a throw to this is kind of a throwback to a Broncos draft pick, Seth Williams. I think he was a 6th round draft pick, not too quite a few years ago now.
2021, Payton's first draft.
There you go. So yeah, he was, I would say his time at Auburn, if you were really looking at that and saying, how would you draft him just based on his Auburn tape? Undraftable. Again, there was flashes. Don't get me wrong. But there was so much inconsistency in his game. I just don't think you would have taken that kind of chance. Maybe a 7th round flyer just because, again, he's
tools.
Yeah, he's got some tools.
Smart kid. Yeah.
and there's a little bit of that namesake that you've got attached to that.
5-star recruit.
Beyond that,
Also.
Yeah, 5-star recruit. You're going to think maybe I can turn this kid into something. But beyond that, he 7th round, undraftable kind of thing. And him going to Oregon was an incredible decision on his part. Really changed how he played the game, how he thought about the game. I mean, you saw some major growth in his time there, which is great. Like, that's what you want to see. You want to see a player from age 18 to 23 make some strides as a player, that they're not that same guy. So I think whenever I go back and watch that Auburn tape, it's not that I throw it out. It's just I try to remember there's reasons that this happened. Part of it's on Bo, part of it's on the Auburn program too.
Yeah, and I appreciate the comment here, Cody. I sometimes have a hard time with the true comparison between quarterbacks and using that as a measuring stick in a single game sample size, because last year you had Russell Wilson beat a Josh Allen led Bills team. You had them beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs with Russell Wilson. Does that make him better? I know you're not saying that Bo Nix is obviously better than Herbert or whatever because of that one game, but really I don't put too much weight on that overall. But it is interesting, and it shows that big moments, not shying away from them. He's definitely been under the spotlight. Again, came in, started as an 18-year-old, really in the spotlight at Auburn because he's a legacy. His father played quarterback there. So, and then a big time get for Oregon in the transfer portal still as well. And growth there as well. I mean, Heisman favorites, they had his, 10-foot poster all around Manhattan this year, Times Square, with Bo for Heisman. I think he finished 3rd, something like that. But yeah, no, he knows big moments. Again, beating Justin Herbert in one game, that's great. But you can go back and find examples all throughout history. I mean, Ian Book with Notre Dame this year, he beat Caleb Williams. Yeah, okay. I don't really care too much about that in the end. We got Gary Palmer coming in here at $9.99, says, love the show, guys. Love you, Gary. Hope you're doing well. And do appreciate the comment here, Cody. I mean, we'll see. We're going to have Justin Herbert versus Bo Nix this season and hopefully the next few seasons with Jim Harbaugh. It's going to be interesting to watch. No doubt. We got our guy Patrick in the house. Aloha, BTB. Overall pleased with the draft. 24 training camp countdown is on. Yeah, I think they did probably about as good as you could have expected. Excited about adding pass rush and Ellis, adding Troy Franklin to it, and again, coming back. You took a calculated risk at Bo Nix, 12, because there is an opportunity cost there. If you miss on the quarterback, that could have been a tackle, a pass rusher, something like that. That could have been a valuable piece, but you did not trade a lot, and it seems somebody that you empowered your head coach, who they really wanted. And circling back around on who that coach really wanted, we had comments from former defensive coordinator underneath Rex Ryan, I believe, and underneath Bill Belichick. And then for a bit, the Jets head coach, I haven't heard the name in a while, but Eric Mangini did an interview with Colin Cowherd talking about the Broncos process. And as you mentioned, he said that really felt like a consolation prize for Denver. Nobody in that room was high-fiving. You didn't hear any post-draft interviews where they were excited about it at all. And that Denver went into the draft. You're not supposed to shop for groceries hungry, and Denver went in the draft starving with Wilson, DiNucci, and Stidham. I will say, and again, I think Sean Payton, you may not like him, but I think he is pretty authentic when he talks. He's smart, but I do think you kind of know where he stands on a lot of things. And right after the draft, right after the pick was over, he went on Pat McAfee and he sounded energized, enthused about Broncos getting Bo Nix. So I'll disagree on Denver not being excited about it. They took a shot on the quarterback. They empowered Sean Payton. And as you mentioned, this is I don't want to say anchor because that implies sinking, but this is a huge bit for Sean Payton's legacy. If this works out or doesn't work out, it could be the make or break for him having a bust in Canton or not.
Yeah. We got David, our friend David, coming in with the $4.99 super saying, do you believe that Bo Nix would have been available in the 20s, 30s, or 40s? Sadly, we may never know this for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix was one of those players. He either fit what you like to do on offense or he didn't. Like Caleb Williams is one of those guys. I think he can fit in most offenses. He has that kind of arm talent, creativity, all those kind of things. If you want him to be that deep thrower on a regular basis, he can do that. If you want him to be a pocket passer, he didn't do it as much at USC, but he's shown he can do it. If you need him rolling out, whatever you need, I think he can make that work. Bo Nix, like I said, he goes to certain kinds of offenses. And so when I heard like the LA Rams were interested in him, that makes sense. I think he fits very much a McVay offense of what he wants to do. Get the ball into his playmakers' hands on time, let them go make a play down the field, or take a quick pass, turn up the field quickly, all those kind of things. That makes a ton of sense. Those are the kind of coaching staffs that you're looking at. So I don't think he would have made it out of the first round, especially once Penix went there at 8, McCarthy there at 10. Like it was Bo Nix and then a huge drop off to that next set of quarterbacks. And so I'm sure some team would have got desperate and just said, hey, we've got to go get this guy. We can't wait till the second round. We can't depend on that happening. And I would push back on the Broncos weren't celebrating in the war room. There is video of them. Like they are all high-fiving and there's everybody in the back clapping and smiles everywhere, hugs going on. And Joe Webb, you see him like he's all jumping for joy and excited. So to say that they weren't excited, I'm like, did you actually watch what they did? Or are you just assuming that they weren't happy because you don't like Bo Nix? Like, I think that's kind of it. If you didn't like Bo Nix going into this process, you just assume the Broncos just reached and didn't like it. Like they don't like him. Those who think that love Bo Nix are like, yeah, of course the Broncos are excited about this. So I think that plays into it a little bit, your own personal idea of who Bo Nix is. I'm not saying you do that because I know you're not as big on Bo Nix as I am. I'm just saying that I think some of especially the national media guys kind of play into that. The Broncos had no choice but to reach for him.
And I think some of it's probably coming back to how Sean Payton is perceived league-wide, right? Like even coming out in the combine, pre-combine presser where he's saying a lot of people are really bad at evaluating quarterbacks, and we're happy about it because we're not. Some people think Sean Payton is arrogant and not really liked a lot. I mean, the Bounty Gate stuff and whatever, and he's hyper-competitive, kind of a little bit anal retentive, just like super hyper fixated. But, a lot of people didn't like Peyton Manning when he was playing, or Tom Brady, or Bill Belichick, or some of the all-time greats. He's definitely more of an old school coach in that perspective. So a chance to, dismiss Sean Payton or punch down, or I guess punch up in this instance, makes some sense. And again, we're going to find out if Sean Payton can back his words about being a good evaluator compared to league consensus, because consensus was Bo Nix, day 2 guy, Denver reached, but that doesn't matter right now. All that matters is Denver allegedly took a guy that they really liked in Bo Nix, and somebody who's going to run the offense and somebody who's going to keep them on time. Again, I mean, we've heard Sean Payton mention so many times frustrations with getting play calls in, working in the middle of the field, and not taking sacks. And that's something Bo Nix was just so good at Oregon. It wasn't, while also still being an athlete as well. It's not, Michael Penix, didn't take a lot of sacks, but also not really testing things, creating outside of structure. Bo Nix can still do that, get his head down and run. Sometimes I wish he'd be a little bit more patient in the pocket, work the pocket to get to that second read and hunt for those big plays that way. But staying out of those negatives, a huge, huge plus for Bo Nix scouting report, and something that Sean Payton has talked about every single chance he's had this offseason, not taking sacks. Bo Nix is going to bring that.
Right. And this is where, and this ties into your question here, Chase. So I'll go ahead and read your question, and then I'll say what I'm going to say. Thank you for the super chat here for $5, saying, what are some things you expect to be different in terms of play calling with Nix instead of Russ? So a Pittsburgh media person came out and said that they had been talking to people within the Broncos organization, and they said that obviously Sean Payton was very frustrated with Russell Wilson. Said that they had to shrink down their playbook, and we've talked about that on here before, so this isn't anything new to us. Shrink down the playbook to work for Russell Wilson because he couldn't memorize the entire playbook. Then even that he was struggling with, and so they had to change the names of the plays to like 2-word things so that he could just call 2 words and they would know the play. So they couldn't get any kind of the option stuff in there because he just was struggling to get the play out in the huddle, which led to some of the delay of game stuff that we've seen with Russell Wilson being here. They said he struggled with snap count, or he couldn't quite get that down. So the offensive line timing wasn't going great, which led to some sacks, which led to a lot of confusion. there's a couple other things. I can't remember what all they talked about, but they pretty much, yeah, Russell Wilson led to a lot of the offense being limited. So when we're talking about in terms of things being different, one, you could probably get more of your playbook in to the field because Bo Nix sounds like he's got a pretty good mind for football, understanding things, getting things called out. You're going to see a lot more timing routes where the quick slants, the quick outs, the comebacks, probably
Stick.
some deep crossers. Yeah, stick. You're going to see some of those plays show up a lot more. Where with Russell Wilson, it was a lot of kind of deep crossers. You had your underneath routes just because, he needed some kind of outlet in case things were breaking down, which is why the running backs got a lot of catches last year. And then a couple guys running some deep routes just in case they went over the top. It was kind of limited to that. And he couldn't really even attack the middle on those deep crossers because usually he was waiting until they crossed clear across the field because he didn't like throwing over the middle of the field. And so it led to a lot of big plays. Like it was pretty much a big play, quick outlet to the running back or bust. That was kind of it. Cody W with $2 going to see the middle of the field actually used. Yeah, that's another part of it. Bo Nix was pretty good at attacking the middle of the field when he did. And so I'm excited to see some of those plays. Like I said, those quick slants, like that is such a big part of the NFL game where you're trying to put pressure, especially on those linebackers to have to make decisions. That's where the RPO game comes into play. I was listening to one of the Broncos' old linebackers. I can't remember who I was listening to, but he said, I hate some of those RPO plays because I don't know exactly where I'm supposed to be going sometimes. I don't know if I'm supposed to be attacking the run game and then opening up the gap behind me. It just puts a lot of pressure on those guys to make a good decision. And Bo Nix, he did a lot of RPO work there at Oregon. So I think you're going to see a lot of that show up in the playbook early on. Probably as he grows in the NFL, you're going to see less and less of that just because NFL coaches don't like to call that as much. You're still seeing it more just because it's part of the college game in today's world. But anything else you would add to what I've said?
I think you will see more RPO looks in general coming in here, and I think you're going to see the quarterback utilized more as a runner in designs because that's something that can get Bo Nix going. You can pick up some easy yards still that way. And we saw what Payton liked to do at Taysom Hill. Not specifically that Bo Nix will be Taysom Hill, but adding that quarterback run design option, I think, is a big part of it. Denver is, while they did make a big draft investment in Bo Nix, it's not like a big, huge contract on the whole. So I don't think they're going to be completely, oh my gosh, our franchise quarterback, don't touch him. Maybe Denver is going to be on the forefront of starting to treat some of these quarterbacks like running backs and draft, use them up, and then let them go rather than paying, the Tua Tagovailoas of the world $50 million a year. So utilizing the quarterback run is something I am interested in for them as well with Bo Nix because he is a good athlete and a well-built player as well at his side. He's sturdy. So I'm expecting that to be we saw it some with Russell Wilson, but it always felt a little bit more, sleight of hand gimmicky rather than like a fully implemented part of the offense.
Yeah. And he was a lot slower than I expected. Like it looked like he was really having to work hard to run at times where Bo Nix, it's a little bit smoother. Russell Wilson, when he was younger, yeah, that played a part because Russell Wilson, when he was younger, had no problem. He didn't look like he was having to really work at it as much as he does now.
Yeah, without a doubt. I will be curious to see the red zone efficiency. Obviously, Russell Wilson, that was one of the big, huge positives for his time in Denver last year. He was one of the most efficient red zone passing quarterbacks in the NFL while he was starting. Now, part of that was Denver, for some reason, was struggling a lot to get in the end zone via rushing the football. It took forever for Javonte Williams to find a touchdown this last season. And some of that was partially by design, just how many opportunities and wide open guys really for Russell Wilson. Not totally, like that play touchdown to Cortland Sutton in the back left of the end zone. That's just making something happen. That's improbable, right? But a lot of guys, pretty wide open, good design stuff. And bringing that back, I went into the Senior Bowl, trying to be open-minded and like, okay, if Bo Nix, Michael Penix, whatever, absolutely kills it here, I'm willing to be okay. They belong. They're definitely a first round quarterback, kind of like how I came in skeptical of Baker Mayfield. And then he had a real good showing at the Senior Bowl. I'm like, okay, arms live. Guys responded to him. First round for sure. Part of it was some of the play calling. I mean, Scott was down there. He could probably to attest to it. Just never felt like it was really flowing for the offensive stuff until I believe it was the day 2 red zone stuff, red zone drills with Bo Nix, where he went like 7 for 8 or day 3. Excuse me. Thank you, Scott. Day 3 red zone stuff. And it was like, oh, that's the guy we've been waiting for. Gosh, there's some efficiency. So I'm hoping for some, not a massive drop in red zone efficiency this year from Russell Wilson to Bo Nix. And we'll see. I mean, to give credit to Sean Payton and Russell Wilson both. Last year, Russell Wilson was middle of the pack in offensive efficiency. Now, the sacks killed a lot of drives, and obviously there was some frustration there, but they still managed to cobble together a somewhat efficient offense last season with Russell Wilson. We're all talking about Bo Nix like he's undoubtedly going to be better than Russell Wilson next year, but
Yeah,
we don't know, right? Like, I mean, let's be real. I had to pour cold water on it, but like, let's see what happens here. Let's not make total assumptions. Like, I'm kind of losing my mind here with some of the floor, middle of the pack ceiling stuff with Bo Nix. Like, his floor is Derek Carr, $45 million a year quarterback is his floor when we haven't seen him play an NFL snap yet. Man, they should have
yes,
gone number
please.
1 overall.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? But I want to see what it looks like on the field.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And if he has, honestly, I wouldn't much mind the touchdown to interception ratio that Russ Wilson had last year. If you're eliminating 2/3 of the sacks,
yep.
I mean, that would be a pretty darn good season for a rookie. There's not many rookie quarterbacks, honestly, that throw over like 20 to 25 touchdowns. Usually 18, 17, it's usually the expectation, like a touchdown a game. If you can get that from them, maybe you can work on that for the next year. So again, if he has that touchdown to interception ratio, taking less sacks, keeping the offense on track, and the red zone stuff, yeah, I do expect there to be a drop in the quarterback efficiency, but maybe not the offensive efficiency, just because now you've added Estimate to the running back group. So maybe the running game could actually be a little bit more efficient. You know, Javonte Williams being healthier this year, that would play a big part in it as well. Things being on time. Like I said, Sean Payton, some of the plays he designed in the red zone, genius. I mean, guys, wide open. You don't see that in the NFL, even when they're in between the 20s, let alone in the red zone. To have a guy have nobody within 5-6 yards of him, that is just nuts. And so that's the part where it gets me excited about Sean Payton, the play caller, now having a quarterback that maybe he feels like can run his system and what he wants to do. Like that's the part where I'm trying to keep my expectations down. But no, I do. I think most people have to kind of remember he's a rookie. I know we just saw CJ Stroud have an incredible rookie season. And we've seen some other quarterbacks. Justin Herbert had a great rookie season. Cam Newton had a great rookie season. Andrew Luck had a great rookie season. So, I mean, we've had some quarterbacks do some of these things. And I think everybody's like, oh, well, then the next guy has to go in and do that too. No, sometimes it really is about that building up to becoming the great quarterback. It's not an easy transition going from the college game to the NFL game. He's going to see things that he hasn't seen before. And he's going to see athletes that he hasn't seen before. I mean, I know the Pac-12 still had some good athletes, but we're still talking jumping up to that next level where the entire defense is the number 1 guys from college teams or number 2 guys, you know, those kind of things. So it's just give it a little bit of time for sure.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I mean, how Oregon ran their offense, it works for the college game and the type of athletes that they're going against with their pretty large talent advantage against most opponents. I think Oregon probably did not play a team last season that had higher average recruiting rankings than they had on their team. Like, they've been beating up USC in the recruiting. They've been beating up Washington for sure. Washington obviously had them twice, but the average talent there was great. And Bo Nix was not under pressure a lot. I mean, their offensive line, I watched a lot of Oregon this last year. I can't think of a single game where their offensive line obviously lost the game or lost their matchup. They were a plus every single game, and that'd be great if we could get that in Denver too. But we'll see. And yeah, Kenny Miller comes in and says Josh Allen needed time. Josh Allen is a rarity. Number one, because he's got probably the second best overall tools of any starter in the NFL. I might take Anthony Richardson's overall athleticism over Allen, but he's way up there. And also typically quarterbacks, when they've had as many starts being as bad as Allen, don't tend to work out. It's kind of like pointing to Josh Allen as like an outlier. Like it worked for Josh Allen. To me, it's kind of like pointing at Tom Brady and saying like, we can find quarterbacks in the 6th round. It happens. It is really improbable based on that many starts. But there are always outliers, right? You can believe if you want.
Right. No, what I'm saying is more just understand there's going to be some growing pains. Like he's going to throw a couple interceptions that are going to make you go, oh, what the heck were you doing his rookie season? It's going to be, can he learn from that and not make that mistake again? Those are the guys that make that next step in the NFL, or after they make adjustments after the 5 or 6 games of getting to watch him in the NFL and how the Broncos are trying to use him. Can he make that next adjustment to make them have to go, oh, crap, now he can do this against us? Those are the guys that really, like I said, just become great starters in the NFL. And we've seen it like Justin Herbert. I look at his rookie season. Like there was those flashes that you're like, okay, yeah, we got something here. This kid can do some great things. He made a lot of mistakes along the way, but you could tell like this is going to be something. Mm-hmm. Even Patrick Mahomes, like his first couple of years, he got away with a lot of crap. He probably should have had 10 more interceptions each of those seasons. Just guys were dropping it. I think he had the highest interception drop rate of any quarterback in the NFL going back. There might have been one other quarterback that was up there with him. I can't remember who it was, but you saw obviously the rest of it. And you're like, okay, this is worth it. Like we can live with some of these mistakes early on. And now he's not making those as often as he did earlier in his career.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, cautiously optimistic, but waiting to see what happens with him. I will say, credit to Fowler for the bit about Denver maybe taking the phone, maybe moving up to 9. I think you're right, though. If Denver was worried about the Viking, or if JJ McCarthy was really their guy, you said this before the show. I don't want to steal your thunder, but what did you say about the Broncos maybe trading up if JJ McCarthy was their guy?
Well, okay, so Sean Payton, he's always been that guy that trades up. Why wouldn't, if he really loved JJ McCarthy and he got past 6, why wouldn't he be going to George Payton and being like, we have to go get this guy? They talked about it for Troy Franklin, that he was calling at 6 a.m. telling George Payton, hey, I want this guy. Get up there, trade up, let's go get this Troy Franklin kid. Why wouldn't he be doing that in the room? I mean, he's the guy that's in charge. As much as George Payton still makes the phone calls, Sean Payton's the guy that's telling him what to say on the phone calls. And so I can't see Sean Payton being willing to miss out on his quarterback for a couple day 3 picks or whatever. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot in retrospect of what the Vikings gave up to get their pick. I just can't see it. Broncos would have traded more to get him if that was really their guy.
Yeah, Minnesota trades 11, 129, and 157 for 10 and 203. That's peanuts if you're talking about paying for a quarterback. So I almost wonder, Carl, if potentially we're talking about a Denver being worried about a different team coming up. If like Bo Nix is still their guy, maybe it's the Raiders, maybe it's the Rams, maybe it's the Seahawks, something like that, rather than the actual Vikings with McCarthy. Because again, you probably could have beaten out that offer. And I can't imagine the Jets being like, oh, we love 11, but we can't take 12. That doesn't make any sense to me. So trying to contextualize this, maybe they were trying to maybe feign off a different team, or maybe they're calling everybody and like trying to drag out the pick as much as possible. And the more they're occupying the other general manager, less likely a trade can get through. Sean Payton shooting the, what, I don't know. But again, I just listening to Sean Payton and everything else, and a lot of people connected to the team talking about it, even though I viewed Bo Nix as a day 2 talent. I get them taking it at 12, considering the quarterback inflation, round 2 talent, I'll even say. But again, it just doesn't make sense. If it was JJ McCarthy, you would not let that package keep you from the quarterback you want.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
And the other thing I would say is I've loved really listening to players that used to play for Sean Payton, that they watched this quarterback class, and every single one of them said, "Oh, Bo Nix, that guy, I think really fits with Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton would love this guy." Like every single one of them from January on have been saying that very same thing. I've seen about 3 or 4 of them make that same comment. And so as much as maybe the Broncos were trying to temper that and try to make people not believe that Bo Nix was their guy, I still think when a lot of people are making that connection of, hey, I think this would fit well within what he likes to do. He's accurate, he's smart, he plays within the system. He's going to be coachable, all those kind of things. I think Bo Nix was definitely that guy. And I did love, they asked Bo Nix, did you think the Broncos really liked you? He said, actually, no, I didn't. He said that Sean Payton was kind of indifferent when they were doing their interview. It didn't seem like, asked him a bunch of questions, obviously, but didn't like smile, didn't like do anything. So I think they were even trying to like temper that with Bo Nix a little bit of how much he liked him. JJ McCarthy, when they asked him, like, did you think the Broncos really liked you? He said, oh, yeah, I did. I thought they loved me. I really thought I was going to be a Denver Bronco. So I kind of wonder if he was, because Sean Payton's that way. I think he likes to play some of those mind games. He comes from Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells is like the king of mind games in the NFL to get the most out of somebody. So it definitely wouldn't surprise me if he was doing some of that, but I really do, in my heart of hearts, my mind of minds, I do think Bo Nix was that guy.
And regardless, it's what was available. It's what they took, and it's who they got now. So hopefully that is works out for Denver in the end and for Bo. We got Jay Roper coming in saying, yo, hope you're doing well. Jay, always good to see you. Curly hair gang. Outside says Russ has lost about 3 steps. I will say, to his credit, he looked a little bit more springy last season compared to 2022. Lost a little weight and looked better there as an athlete, but not what he was for sure. That's one of the things about aging quarterbacks. And we don't have to rehash the whole Russell Wilson thing. Maybe we will if it's the week 1 game. Like there's a lot of reports coming. Maybe that'll be the game we go to. Who knows? Zach Powers comes in, says, how many quarterbacks in the league would you take before Nix? If he can get to Tua and Goff range, I think he'd be a solid and worth a pick. Anything less, it gets rough. Again, you're talking about a first-round pick. If he even ends up being a top 20-ish player, it's not like a great ROI at the pick, because if you're drafting a guy in the first round, you're hoping they ended up a perennial top 10 quarterback. But I think there is a difference between, taking that shot on the rookie quarterback before having to pay them and then paying them. So you can still get value from them on that rookie contract if they are in that Tua Goff range. I honestly think you're talking probably more. Yeah, Tua Goff makes sense. Geno Smith, Derek Carr. I think that's probably about the level. You really don't want to be hanging out with the Desmond Ridder, Sam Howells, Kenny Pickett's, Gardner Minshew's of the world. That's where it kind of gets a little bit scary. But we'll see. Hopefully they can maximize that and maximize it quick, given Bo Nix, how many starts he already has. Do you have a thought on his range? Like what makes the ROI worth it?
Like I said, top 20 for his rookie year.
I don't think that's crazy to ask, especially because Denver isn't like a horrible, horrible, horrible offensive situation.
Yeah, I would say really in the NFL right now, you've got about 7 to 8 guys that are that clear 7 to 8 top players. And then that next group, it changes by the year of who's in that next tier. And probably 8 to 20, you can get in there. And like I said, having Sean Payton as his play caller makes a huge difference. Tua, would Tua be Tua if he didn't have McDaniel calling his plays? I don't think so. Goff, he's got a great system there as well that with Detroit. He was doing pretty good with McVay, but I think he's found his place there really in Detroit at this point. So I do. I think Nick stands a really good chance to even outdo a lot of these other rookies. I think he's got a better situation than Jaden Daniels, especially offensive coordinator wise. I'm not sure how I feel about what they have there in Washington. Weapons around him. They got some work to do there. Having a defensive coach I had somebody ask about Caleb Williams and his situation. And I said, well, I still hate this idea of pairing a rookie quarterback with a defensive-minded head coach. Because let's say they do have success. Well, then their offensive coordinator probably getting a head coach job here in the next year or two. So then you have to bring in another guy, new system, try to figure something out. And you don't know how that's going to work. Josh Allen this last year, like his offense coordinator got a head coaching job, and the new guy they brought in didn't do as well. They had to fire him halfway through the season after the Broncos lost. They fired the guy because things were falling off the rails there. And so that's always kind of one of my main issues there. I like to pair a young quarterback with a good offensive mind, especially a veteran offensive mind. Like an Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Sean Payton, that kind of thing, where this is a guy that's been here a long time. He knows how to talk to a lot of different quarterbacks. So he's going to know how to get across his message. So like I said, I think most of the excuses for Bo Nix are going to be out the window. He's got a good system. He's got a good offensive line. He should have a strong running game. Okay, weapons. That definitely can still be improved. But he's got enough that he shouldn't fail.
I think I agree as well. Again, the big thing that I've been saying on the shows that has me worried is Denver's offensive line was like so healthy last season. I think 99.6% of the starts came from their week 1 starters. Mike McGlinchey missed like a few snaps here or there,
Right.
but that's unlikely to happen again. And we don't really know about the depth of the unit. Maybe it's great, but it's not highly invested in as far as what they're paying them from draft picks or salary cap. So we'll see. It'd be great to have that level of offensive line health again, but I don't know. We'll see. Michael Ronquillo, great show tonight. Nick and Carl on building the Broncos. Go Broncos. Appreciate you coming in here. As we wrap up the show, JB 3 Degree comes in. Good to see us as more or less 300-yard games from the Broncos this year with the Bo Nix rather than Russell Wilson. How many 300-yard games did we even get from Russell Wilson last season? I can't even remember. I don't think it was a lot. Do you remember?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head here.
Game logs. Here we go.
Maybe one.
I know he had a couple. At least the Commanders game was 300 yards. He had 2.
Yep, 2. He had the Miami game,
yep,
and the Washington game were the 2.
Man,
he had one game that was less than 100 yards. That was great against the Chiefs when they lost 19-8.
That was gross.
And quite a few games that were less than 150 yards. So he had more games less than 150 yards than he had 300-yard games last season.
I know it's always risky, and I'm always this conservative one here, but I'm going to go over. Maybe he doesn't even win the starting job, and that looks stupid in the end, right? Kind of hedging there, but I'm going to go over. And why is that? I think he's going to do a better job of taking advantage of the space that Sean Payton creates and letting his guys create yak. So while the air yards might not be incredible, the adjusted depth of target, maybe not great, but that hasn't been great for a lot of quarterbacks who have been doing real. I mean, Patrick Mahomes last season, I think, was one of the lowest average depth of target of any quarterback in the NFL. Now, granted, it's because he saw the lightest boxes and the highest 2 deep safeties in the NFL, and good quarterbacks take what's available. I don't think teams are going to play defense against Bo Nix like they are Patrick Mahomes right now, but still, I think you're going to be able to take better advantage of spacing and creating some yak. That was something. I think some of the completion percentage stuff is a little overrated for Bo Nix, based on what I watched. Like, I've definitely seen more accurate quarterback prospects, but he's got enough arm and he's a good athlete as well. So it's good enough, but the ability for his weapons to create after the catch that aren't just pure dump offs, I think is going to be vastly better than with Russell Wilson. That was something that drove me nuts. I mean, it was a game 2 years ago. There was a slant and easy, nobody within 6 yards of Cortland Sutton, and he has to leave his feet to go get it and then falls down. And people are upset. Why'd he go down? Quarterback, easy throw, and just not even close, limiting yak there. So I think that's something that can create better opportunities and therefore more 300-yard games. Also, the defense is going to be worse. So probably a little bit more keep up games as well. And Russell Wilson's 2 300-yard games came in losses. So I expect the defense to be worse next year.
Yeah. And both those were high scoring games by the other team, 35 and 70 for Washington and Miami. So yeah, if the defense is struggling, you're going to have to throw more. Leads, sometimes the defense goes into prevent. Sometimes you're getting those garbage yards. So I definitely expect 300-yard games. I mean, you look at Sean Payton, obviously, with Drew Brees. They had how many 5,000-yard seasons? In part because they use the passing game as, those short passes. They love that. They love to use that to really kind of get things going. It was almost an extension of the run game, is what you like to say. So I expect some of that with Bo Nix. They're going to be doing a lot of the same thing. They're still going to have a lot of screen passes that are thrown in there, trying to pick up 3 to 5 yards on first down, keeping a defense honest that this ball might be coming out quick, those kind of things. So you're right. I think you'll have probably 3 or 4 of them this upcoming season. I don't expect a ton, but there'll be plenty.
Yeah, I agree as well. Phil also coming in with stars saying, my second question tonight, with 10 to 12 wide receivers on the team, who, if anyone, goes? Well, some people are going to go. It's going to come down to some special teams stuff there as well. I mean, we're still waiting to see if Cortland Sutton will end up on the team in the end. But Mims is definitely safe. I would say that probably Josh Reynolds is safe. Everybody else, to a certain extent, is up for debate. I mean, Tim Patrick has to prove he can stay healthy. I guess that's technically on the team if he gets hurt again or is on IR, but we'll see there. Jalen Virgil, completely to be determined. Brandon Johnson, we will see about. Lil Jordan Humphrey, maybe not. A lot of that's going to come down to special teams as well.
Troy Franklin should be safe, being a 4th-round pick.
Probably. I guess I could see a reality where he comes in and he's not good and maybe they try to put him on the practice squad. But yeah, I agree. The odds are very, very high he's safe after trading up for him. So that's a good call.
Yeah. I would say Mims is the most safe of all the wide receivers. Reynolds, number 2. Franklin's probably number 3 at this point.
And then Sutton?
Honestly, Tim Patrick, I think, would be more safe just because of the contract situation.
Yeah.
He took the pay cut. Cortland Sutton still has some value in a trade. We do know the Broncos were shopping him. I could see an injury happening in training camp to a team, where they just get hit with like 3 wide receiver injuries, and then they're desperately calling the Broncos and saying, hey, we're willing to give you a 3rd-round pick to get this guy.
Yep.
They're not calling about Tim Patrick. They're calling about Cortland Sutton. So that's the only thing there that I can see.
Yep. Absolutely. And it'll be fun to see. A lot of fun things coming up here for the Broncos soon. We're going to see Bo Nix in action for the Broncos for the first time. Hopefully get the numbers here for the rookies and the schedule release. So fun times in Broncos country, maybe a transition season, but a lot of potential as well. Definitely a new era in Broncos country. This is Sean Payton's team, and he picked his quarterback, and we're along for the ride and hoping for the best. Right. So we'll see what happens. Appreciate everyone coming in here today. Make sure you're following Carl and I on Twitter. Carl is at Carl Dumler MHH. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at Mile High Huddle, as well as if you're on Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle, and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, Mile High Huddle, of course. Like our show and share on social media platforms. We want to give a shout out to all of our super chat folks that came in: Michael Ronquillo, David Mickelrath, Lawrence Rivera, Gary Palmer, Cody W, David Carmelo, Chase Wellner, Cody again, Michael again. You guys are great. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with us tonight. Always a lot of fun. And we're going to get some new football to analyze here. I mean, it's, just rookie mini camp stuff, but seeing those guys in action, glad to hear Jonah Ellis signed a injury waiver of some sort. So the contract's not signed, but he's protecting himself and should be out there with that. So any final thoughts, Carl, as we wrap it on up here?
No, yeah, you're right. I think they hit the field Friday for rookie mini camp, so should have their numbers before then. I'm interested to see if anybody gives up their number for Bo Nix. Otherwise, I think he has to take number 16, if I remember right. I think that's the only one that's left for him. But yeah, it should be. I know we're getting into kind of the slower time of the year and everything, but definitely going to be still plenty to talk about. It's going to be nice hearing all the different camp battles that are going to be going on. We actually have some positions with depth that we haven't had in the past, with edge, defensive line, quarterback obviously even has some depth, quarterback or running back, wide receiver that we already talked about. There's 10 different names out there, and I could make a case for probably 9 of them to be on the roster. Wouldn't shock me to see any of them make that step and take over. So we'll get into that as the off season goes on for sure. But thanks everyone for tuning in and having a good time with us tonight.
Yeah, definitely a lot of fun. I did want to give a rest in peace again to Joe Collier, defensive coordinator for the Orange Crush for the Broncos. Definitely a part of Broncos history. Um, Bummer, of course, but we'll live forever because of the impact he made, and will always be a part of Broncos country. So appreciate everyone. We will see you next Tuesday again. Make sure you continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.